Keith, how are you doing?
Howdy, how are you guys doing?
Hey!
Howdy. Hey, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I know you guys have talked about, Planned Parenthood and abortion several times in the last couple of episodes.
Uh-huh.
But I'm an atheist, and I find myself oftentimes engaging with my Christian friends online.
Okay.
And this is a topic where I feel like I've been struggling over the last few years with this issue, trying to be logical about justifying my beliefs overall. And one thing, I recently was in a debate with a friend, and in the past I've frequently argued that all federal funding should be cut from Christian aid organizations because of the Establishment Clause.
Okay,
And,
yes.
Talking to my friend, I kind of realized the hypocrisy of having previously advocated for this point, and then now currently there's this argument that they want to cut funding for Planned Parenthood, which I personally think is idiotic.
I'll tell you why it's different.
Well,
Okay.
it is different, but go on.
Well,
Their justification being similar. I feel like it's similar to my argument in that they're saying that they're advancing. Their constant argument is that although the funding is not going directly to abortions, what the money that goes to these stations allows for their existence, and thus these places would not exist if not for federal funding, and thus even though the funding is not directly going to abortions, it's allowing there to be greater number of locations where abortions can be performed.
mm-hmm, but abortion is not a religious act, right?
Yeah, but it's obviously doesn't go against the establishment
here's
clause,
the thing
their
about
argument being that it being illegal.
But a church, for example, could operate a secular charity,
Yeah.
and then they could get funding, but that's not what they're doing, right? You have a place like you've got something like Habitat for Humanity that promotes a Christian message. This is promoting they on their website they give the glory to God for everything that they do.
Yeah.
So if you're going to integrate your religion with your charity, then you've made that step to make it the same.
Yeah, but let me also draw a line, because I know a lot of people who are otherwise generally in favor of separation of church and state talk like, this federal funding of abortion is a special case and we should exempt that. I want to ask you how you feel about, let's say, public schools teaching evolution.
Well, I'm obviously for it. Yeah, or I am for it. Yeah.
So I think a Christian would take a similar line of argumentation and say, "Hey, this is public money going into something that offends me personally, that offends my religion, and because of the separation of church and state, the state should not be promoting something that is against my religion." There's a problem with that argument, right?
Yeah, but let's see, even without a religious justification, where they would be arguing that we've agreed with them by legal matters that the federal government's not going to subsidize abortions, and that this is a back way of subsidizing it, even though their reasoning might be.
Well, yeah, my question would be why.
The federal government
why wouldn't it
abortion?
be?
What's the problem
I totally
with
agree,
it?
but I feel like I'm trying to justify my argument for why if we have to take into account the fact that it is illegal, although I don't think that it should be.
Wait, what's illegal?
For the federal government to subsidize abortions.
It's not. Why should it be?
They just don't.
Okay.
There's no law against. If they wanted to do it, they can do it.
Right. It's not that
Planned Parenthood funding for abortion aren't
Wait, what?
subsidized.
What?
I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Isn't it currently in place that funding for Planned Parenthood exists so that it must do abortions?
Wait, I don't understand what he's.
There's a couple of issues to unpack there. He said, I think you said, and we're having some line trouble again. But
oh, sorry.
I think you said that Planned Parenthood exists just to get around laws against funding abortions. Is that what you were asking?
Oh, I case that currently funding does not go to abortions through Planned Parenthood.
Right, it does not. Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Because there has been a lot of fighting on behalf of Republicans, basically saying that we should pull all funding for that sort of thing. Although there are a couple of issues there. One is that the great majority of things that services that Planned Parenthood provides, like contraception and cancer screenings and general education of people. Actual providing of abortions is a very small percentage of what they do as a whole. But having said that, I don't believe there should be any legal problem with funding abortions in the same way that and to the same extent that any other normal legal medical procedure is funded. So, for instance, there are disagreements about whether, the government should be in the business of providing insurance, and I'm not going to, of helping people get health insurance, and people derisively call it Obamacare, and that's not an issue that I'm going to get into because this isn't a political show. But what the federal government now provides is a means for people to buy into insurance. And you could say that anything they spend their insurance on, like cancer treatments or blood pressure medication or anything like that, is being funded by the government, even though it's basically people paying into insurance and the insurance companies paying them back. But part of the controversy that's come up in the last few years is, I particularly don't like abortion, so I want to stop people on those programs from using their insurance money to pay for abortions. And I think it's nonsense that they're cutting out a special exemption for that.
Yeah, nobody asks me whether or not, when I send my tax money in, if there's certain things I don't support, nobody asks me if I would like to, not have my money go to that.
Right.
But I think, what's important to me is, if you had a church, let's say we have, Jim's Church of Christ on the corner, and they decide, there's people within that church, and they're like, we want to operate a food bank. And so they start a food bank. I don't think that anybody's going to argue that public funding can't go to the food bank. I think the argument would be, if you're going to call it Jim's Church of Christ Food Bank, then there's a problem. I mean, we're not supposed to be funding anything. We're not supposed to be doing anything that promotes an establishment of religion. And if they want to do a charity and keep it secular, but it just happens to be something just like with Catholic hospitals, right? They have public hospitals. I don't know what the status is, but I would be stunned if they don't get some kind of government subsidy for these private hospitals for certain things. I mean, I have to look it up, but the issue for me is when you start integrating your religion into that effort, it's no longer now you've made it not secular, and now we can't support that with public funding. It's not that I would withhold public funding from a secular charitable effort just because a church instituted that. But if they're going to do like a Catholic hospital and say, and we're going to deny people certain types of medical care because of our religious perspectives, well, that's not, to me, that at that point you've got a religious hospital. This is part of your church. And you're promoting your religion through this church by actually crafting what care is and isn't offered based on your religious views, not on medical views. And I think the problem is that a lot of these, like for example, they want to do the, the vouchers, right? The school vouchers. Mm-hmm. And they want those to go to private schools. And there are people saying they can go to religious schools. And I'm like, wait a minute, no. The moment you start to make that school religious, I have an issue with this. And that to me is a big problem. It's not that, I don't ever argue that if I give money to your food bank on the corner, then you're going to be able to use funds that you raise through donations to do other things, and that I'm somehow therefore inadvertently funding your church. I've never argued that. Like, that's just weird to me. I mean, do people argue that?
I feel like I could see that argument existing wherein you say, you are using this as a base of operations, and though your primary objective, so that you say, is to provide needs for the public, mm-hmm. you're also using this location as a platform for advancing your religion.
And if they are, then that's wrong.
Abortion is not a religious position.
Right. But imagine, Matt, the fact
What?
I was just going to say that what if a law was it to be established that said that no federal funding could go to support abortions? Would then the same logic exist that Planned Parenthood could no longer receive federal funding? Would that occur?
What would be the justification for that law, given that abortion has been stated by the Supreme Court to be legal?
It's a hypothetical. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but it matters because there's the thing called the Lemon Test, which was dealt with, I forget, maybe the 60s, where basically, I would need to look this up. But basically, the Lemon Test is something that the Supreme Court came up with to determine whether there is unnecessarily entanglement between the law and religion. And they said when you propose a new law, there are like 3 tests that they mentioned, which are like, does the law have a clear secular purpose? I'm
looking it up right now.
Help me out, yeah.
I am.
So it's not just something you can gloss over because it's a legal standard. So when I ask why would they pass a law by that, what I'm really asking is, does that meet the Lemon Test?
Yeah. Okay, great. I find this very helpful. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Can I ask another one? I don't want to take up too much of your time on this topic.
Sure, go ahead. Tracie's still looking at it.
I am. If I come up with anything interesting, I'll give a shout. Okay. Go ahead.
The other one I got into recently on this was, I was kind of like, I like Jen. I think he oftentimes talks about the giving a kidney to a child analogy for why. The pro-life standpoint doesn't make logical sense that you should be forced to support a child for this period of time. And it's basically like the cellist analogy, basically, that, if you were hooked up to a famous cellist and giving blood to this person, allowing them to survive, you have no obligation to remain hooked up to them, keeping them alive. You didn't choose to make that choice.
Right.
And so, my religious friend the other day came back, well, that's an unfair analogy. And he came up with this alternative one where he said,
why?
Well, he's going to tell you what his friend came up with.
So it's, I want to get this right. So it's basically, imagine that there's some, it's very hypothetical. There's some new technology that exists whereby a person who's HIV positive has a drug within them that becomes adapted to the genome within the HIV virus that they contain. And so the longer that your drug, the more your drug becomes adapted to fighting HIV within you. Now, let's say that person who's HIV infected has sex with an individual with their HIV positive and infects people who's already
I'm missing some of that. You're breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try to speak slower. Maybe that'll help.
Okay.
But, so this person who's HIV positive, who's already undergoing treatment for their HIV, has sex with another individual without informing them that they're going to be endangered for contracting HIV. And that second person contracts HIV and becomes sick. Now, the only thing that would save that person who's now become immunocompressed due to contracting HIV is a direct blood transfusion from the person who unknowingly infected them with HIV. Mm-hmm. And so under that, I could see to a degree his point here where like...
Well, wait a minute. So let's say that the blood transfusion was the only thing that would save them. Are you saying that you think the law would force the transfusion? Because I don't.
This is also... I don't know about the law. I'm not talking
this
about...
This is a weird analogy.
Well, but this is a legal question.
This is a weird analogy.
It is. It's a messed up analogy.
Because it's taking something that is specifically an immoral act, which is basically having sex with someone while knowingly being in a position to transmit HIV to them without giving them information that they can use to properly consent to this action.
You're basically deceiving somebody.
And it's comparing it to just a woman having sex.
Right.
Have I got this right?
When she has sex, this other person, there's no other person that exists except for the person she's having sex with, and there is no reason to think that it's going to result in a pregnancy. I guess that's the thing that gets me is like, why would we assume that a pregnancy is going to result in that a sex act would result in a pregnancy when people in general are not very good procreators as far as animals go.
I mean, this really fits in with like my
sex
perspective on a
with
lot of anti-choice people, because basically they think that the act of having sex without intending to have a baby is in itself immoral.
Well, here's another question though, right? It sounds like what they're saying is that the sex act comes with an inherent risk of pregnancy, and that, I mean, it's to me it's like the old thing, you had sex, right? I mean, that's what it's boiling down to. The woman had sex, therefore whatever happens as a result of that, she has no right to mitigate any risks, or if a risk event occurs, she can't do anything to stop it. She just needs to put her health and life at risk and go proceed with this gestation, right? I mean, that's what they're arguing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say that this woman had sex and she wants to have a child. Right? Okay, so she has sex intending to get pregnant, wants to have a baby. And so she gives birth to this baby, and she knows beforehand that she carries, let's just say that she knows beforehand she carries like a risk of some genetic issue. Right? And the baby may need
HIV.
tissue. Well,
right?
the child might need tissue, it might need, blood or whatever. And so she gives birth to this child, and sure enough, like within the first week, the liver starts to fail, and she is like almost a natural donor because she is a match, and she says, I don't want to have surgery to remove part of my liver and to donate that. Mm-hmm. Is that legal?
I don't think it is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is legal.
Wait, I'm trying to agree with you. Maybe I didn't say it correctly.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to figure out. It's like she knew that there was this risk. The risk event occurred. She decides not to donate the kidney or the piece of liver, and the infant is going to die as a result. And as a nation, we accept that as reality and not her obligation, even if she was 100% on board and intended to become pregnant before she ever had sex. She still is not beholden to have even a surgery to remove a piece of liver to save her own infant's life.
How does that differ from the HIV analogy then?
What do you mean, how would it differ?
Look, in the
You're
HIV...
taking- you're logically putting them at risk.
Yeah.
Without
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm asking you, how would that be different than the HIV analogy?
In the HIV analogy, if I may, there are two different things that are being discussed. One of them is it legal or ethical to have sex with someone knowing that you are at significant risk of passing HIV on to them and not tell them? And the other thing is, given that the first thing already happened, are you morally obligated or legally obligated?
Legally is what we're asking.
To make restitution about that by doing whatever weird biological thing this person came up with when he was crafting the analogy, right?
Yeah.
And you have to look at what if doing so would put the person with HIV at risk of death.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But still,
Right.
When I was talking about her knowing, like planning the pregnancy, getting pregnant, having the baby, knowing there's this genetic risk that develops, and then she says, I'm not donating the kidney. I mean, I'm not donating the liver part. Do you see that as significantly different than the HIV analogy?
I feel like that is different, but
How?
I feel like I try to make these similar arguments. I've talked to him, and he called me out on making basically special pleading, sort of like coming up with these particular instances in which the case does not exist. And maybe it was my mistake because we were talking about it from a moral standpoint as opposed to a legal standpoint about whether or not each individual in each case morally obligated.
Yeah, morality and law are two different things, and all that really matters in the abortion debate is the law. This is what's being discussed.
Well, the morality of it matters also, so to speak. I mean, it's worthy of discussing.
If you want to discuss it, but it's not going to, I mean, laws are not based on morality, and morality is not based on the law. So, I mean,
I mean, I am serious here that if your friend was trying to discuss this with me, I would not focus on the aftermath. I would focus on why are you comparing a woman who is just having sex without intending to have a baby to a person who is knowingly making somebody else contract HIV? Because one of them is super immoral. Do you think that the other one is comparable to that or not?
Yeah, that a woman that has sex is in that position, that she is automatically just, evil. But I still am wondering, when I do the analogy with the infant that needs the liver part in a week, does that in your head align to that HIV analogy?
Yeah, and I don't think that there would be a legal obligation, but...
I know there's not. I mean, I don't not think it. I
mean,
know it's not a legal obligation for her to do that. And so if that's...
I acknowledge that, I acknowledge that, although I personally don't believe that she should have to give the
liver.
Child the liver, but I do think that there is, it's questionable morality in the decision. Like, it's not like I think that she has to or she should be forced to, but the discussion we're having is about whether or not that sort of situation would still be moral.
Yeah, this is simply a physical reality that this is how the child was born. Yeah, she knows she carries this risk, and the risk event occurred, and so she has a baby that's not going to survive, and she's saying, okay, and the baby is going to die a natural death. She didn't murder it, right? Mm-hmm. The baby is dying as a result of inadequacies of its own physiology, not because the mother was immoral. And we're not obligated to, I guess, give up our own bodies or something to that extreme in order to save someone from a natural death.
Yeah. It's a tough one. I mean, I don't want to keep taking up your time on this, but I mean, I think that that's basically what I was arguing. But then he came back that it's like, well, even if the person that was HIV positive was taking all of these precautions, they were still putting another human life at risk. Like the woman was putting another human life at risk with her decision.
No, she wasn't. She was having sex. Sex has nothing. This other person doesn't even exist. Right? At the point she made a decision to have sex with someone, the person that they're invoking in their analogy does not even exist.
I guess I'll have to
There
think about
isn't
it.
even a person there to deceive or to lie to or to do anything wicked to. There is no person. She's simply having a decision to have sex. The pregnancy is an unintended consequence. In fact, and that's the other thing that I think makes me angry, is that people tend to distort this as though they act like every sex act ends in pregnancies or ends in some kind of conception. And it's like, no, relatively few of them do.
Or should. Some of them seem to think.
And in the human species, sex is mostly a social act. Okay, so there are some species that are very good at procreating. They have sex, like the females come into heat, for example, so that they only are receptive to sex acts when they're in a situation where they can conceive. Human beings are not like that, right? We don't have that restriction. There are some species that only mate during those periods. We can mate anytime. We don't know really, except for modern science, we really didn't understand when women would come into estrus, I guess is what it's called, right? And so it would just be like you could have sex anytime, and up until very recently in human history did we even understand when the period was that she was most susceptible to conceive. And also, the male penis functions in order to pump out competitive sperm. Like, what would be the advantage of that? And then that same mechanism, he'll go flaccid after he ejaculates, which means that he's then not pumping his own fluids out. So if he were to have sex with her after another man did, his penis will act to pull that fluid out. Right. Then he ejaculates and it stays. So he's built for male competition, right, in sex. Mm-hmm. She's built to have sex anytime, whether she's fertile or not. I mean, if people can't look at this and tell that the predominant function of sex in human populations is social, not reproductive.
If I may, I think what you're saying is valid on a lot of levels, but I also think that getting into what things are intended for or trying to appeal to the way that they work in a mechanical sense is a little bit at risk of descending into the naturalistic fallacy.
I'm not, but what I'm talking about is they're already going there, but they're even wrong.
Right.
So they're going there and saying that.
Wrong, but I mean, I think the point would be that there are, that basically people want to have sex without, without incurring the risk of pregnancy.
Sure.
That is mostly possible and completely possible when you add in abortion, given the abundance of contraception and modern technology that we have available. And unless it can be demonstrated that this is an immoral action to have to do things, people should get to do what they want. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess what I'm pointing out though is they seem to closely associate conception with sex in a way that it's almost like if I were to say that having a fatal car accident is a risk that that you're aware of when you get into a car, right?
Which it is.
Right. But they treat it like, man, if you get into a car, you know you're going to die in a car accident. And it's like, no, that's not at all true. You can go your whole life trying to have a baby and never conceive. I mean, and a lot of times couples don't have any sort of physical problem with conception, but they still go years and can't conceive. I mean, we're not the best procreators on the planet as far as a species. We're very bad. But at the same time, I'm not. All I'm trying to say is their weird association with almost like it's almost you've got to know you're going to get pregnant if you're having sex, and it's like that is a weird leap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, thank you guys so much. I love you. I love both you guys, and I love the show. So thank you for taking my time talking.
I love you too, Keith.
You heard it here first.
See ya. Next, we are going to take, line 1, Dale in London, and in the meantime, I've got the lemon test up, so unless you're going to read it.
No, I brought it up. I didn't read it, so if you've read it, then go for it.
All right. The lemon test was the result of a case in 1971 called Lemon v. Kurtzman, and the court ruled unanimously in an 8-0 decision, and it was, I believe it had something to do with creationism in schools. Don't have time to read more carefully than that, but basically the lemon test, which is the second section in the Wikipedia article on Lemon v. Kurtzman, says the requirements for legislation concerning religion. The statute must, so number 1, the statute must not result in an excessive government entanglement with religious affairs, where the factors of that are character and purpose of the institution benefited, nature of aid the state provides, and resulting relationship between government and religious authority. Number 2, the statute must not advance nor inhibit religious practice. So, although religious people might argue, the fact that other people are allowed to have abortions is inhibiting my religion, it is not. Number 3, the statute must have a secular legislative purpose. And the reason we brought that up was because at the beginning of the call, you correctly stated that religions should not get direct funding from governments unless they have, unless there is some kind of secular purpose to the funding, which is exactly what the Lemon Law says. And that is not the same as religious people going out of their way to try to outlaw something which is already legal according to the Supreme Court. I'm sorry that offends your religion, but we can't make the laws that are just based on your religion in either direction.
Yeah, and I think like when we were talking about the schools, a Catholic private school named like St. Mary's private school, that would to me would be a religious character. And then when you have courses that are about catechism, you're promoting your religion.
Yes.
So, yeah, I definitely would be like, no, there's no public funding going to that.
Right. Dale, are you there? Dale in London. Hello?
Do we have no Dale?
I'm not hearing Dale.
Wait,
he just disappeared from my
he's
screen.
there. He's on the
What?
screen. He's just not on the line.
No, well, he's on the...
They
yeah.
didn't
still
remove him
exists.
from the list. They
All
just let
Give
us
me
know.
somebody. If it's not Dale, then it's going to be Brian in Colorado. One or the other. Let me know in a minute. What else you got, Tracie?
All right. Oh shoot! And I just closed I hit the wrong button. But let me pull this up and see if I can find something fun. What else was there? We were talking earlier about Westboro. But there was the weird cult that beat the two teenage boys to death. Yeah, that was not. I don't even know quite what that is. I mean, originally it was reported as like a Christian counseling incident, but then the more I heard about it, the more weird it got. So
okay, this was reported on October 16th from New Hartford, New York. It's coming from bigstory.ap.org. I don't know what Big Story is, but AP is the actual news organization. Yeah. So I'm going to assume that this
it was on regular news too. I mean, the
reliable,
story,
neutral story.
This happened.
A mother and father whipped their 19-year-old son in church with an electrical cord and what appeared to be a belt during a deadly all-night spiritual counseling session triggered by his desire to leave the fold, according to witness testimony and police Friday. Church deacon Daniel Irwin testified he peered through a doorway window in the sanctuary during the more than 12-hour ordeal at the Word of Life Christian Church and saw Lucas Leonard bleeding and in apparent agony. Lucas was rolling himself back and forth on the floor and making a sustained monotone moaning, Irwin said. Within hours, the young man would be dead, killed by blows inflicted by his parents, sister, and fellow church members, authorities said.
Yeah.
Damn it, religion.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, this was like some kind of strange little cult. Like, I'm not really sure what their deal was. It wasn't a mainstream, church, but still, what people will do to their children.
Yeah, and to tie this back into the previous topic, things that would be illegal under all other circumstances in any secular situation don't suddenly become legal just because it's a religious person saying, oh, my religion requires this.
Yeah, it is really interesting. There is this attitude in sometimes I see this where there'll be a situation where somebody wants exemption for a particular law. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, there's a difference between the law not persecuting you because of your religion and the law not applying to you because of your religion. Those are two different things. The laws shouldn't be made in such a way as to persecute somebody for a religious purpose. And believe me, I understand that sometimes they're flagrant, but sometimes just like with racist laws or, sexist laws or anything like that, you can have a situation where somebody is subversively trying to build a law that, and this I think is part of what you were talking about. The idea is this law, sometimes you'll put something in place that targets a particular group, and you apply it to the whole population.
The law that is specifically against one religion, and this is the important thing with the Lemon Test, does not have a secular purpose. Right. It's not secular to grind down another religion, whether it's Christianity or Judaism or Islam or whatever.
Right, and target them in some way through the law, even if you pretend that, this law applies to everyone. Well, yeah, but who else is doing this except for this little religious group that you want to hammer?
Outlaw things that are actually directly harmful
to society and make sure everybody is subject to that law.